Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here for this State of the Church meeting. Welcome. It is good to be with you in this way. We just finished live streaming on a Sunday morning, the worship service, and now we're here. There's something so familiar about being here all day. What is unfamiliar is this format, but as we'll hear later, we're hoping that they will change in the relatively near future. So we are honored that you are here today to take some time out of your day to learn more about the state of your church, your Plymouth Church in Minneapolis. As you may know, my name is Seth Patterson, and I am your Minister for Spiritual Formation and Theater. And a few small things before we begin. The format in this time together is that each member of your clergy team will present a piece of the larger state of the church. And this will take about half an hour. And then we will reserve the rest of the time, again about a half an hour, for questions and answers. So that is how today is going to go. So in order to facilitate this, we ask this of you. At the bottom of your screen are two different ways to type, to enter things in. One says chat, and one says Q&A. We ask that you use chat to talk to each other or to ask technical questions of Cody or me, who will also be monitoring it. This is not the place for questions. In fact, if you put a question in the chat, there's a good chance it will be missed. Instead, we want you to put questions into the question and answer part. That is also on the bottom of your screen, and it says Q&A. And here, that is where we will be monitoring the questions and answers. And when we are done, I will be monitoring those and asking them. So you are welcome to start asking the questions as we go along. You do not need to wait until the end. As they come to you, you can type them in the Q&A section. If it is for a specific person, you are welcome to indicate that. So that is it for me. Let us begin with a little bit of prayer from Beth.
Good afternoon. Will you join me, please, in the spirit of prayer? Holy One, you have gathered us as a church to covenant with you and one another, imploring us to bind ourselves in your presence to walk together in all your ways, according as you are pleased to reveal yourself to us in your blessed word of truth. You care for and keep us even during a most difficult year, even when our beloved community is scattered rather than gathered. For this we give you thanks. As we open our hearts now to hear your leading through a time of looking back and also forward, we strive to live into your covenant, hope-filled and justice-led, now and forever. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I am so happy to have this opportunity to provide you from the perspective of the clergy team and the staff, the state of our church, including information about our programs, our worship, the work we are doing as we approach the end of a fiscal year and coming into some of the opening up of everything. We wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you directly. And I want to start off by saying very clearly, the state of Plymouth Church is healthy and thriving. Now, that does not mean there are no issues, challenges, and questions that need tending to. Being a church in the 21st century is going to require creativity, innovation, and looking at how we can live true to our mission and vision. And so even though I count from what I see from my vantage point that this church is healthy and thriving, today we want to lay out some things that stand before us. I want to begin by telling you what I've seen. I have been with you for nearly 4 months now. And I want to tell you what I've seen in my short time here. New eyes, new questions, things that have arisen that I have seen. The first thing, whether stated or implied, Plymouth Church does truly embody a commitment to humbly seek and serve God within, among, and beyond. So often when we have words like that, missions and visions, or in our case, purposes of the church, it becomes something that sits on the shelf. But in the 4 months that I have been here, I have seen that lived out in ways both expected, but also surprising and very inspiring. Second, unlike some churches which hunkered down during the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, waiting and surviving, unsure of what to do, not sure of what questions to answer or even pose, I can see that Plymouth set about creating and innovating in ways to both maintain our worship, programming, and staff capacity, but also to attract new people. Plymouth was not simply satisfied with recreating what we had been doing. Yes, we passed a budget and set about maintaining existing structures, programming, and staffing, but when I walked in here, I saw that the clergy, the staff, the boards, everyone kept finding new ways to support and engage members and new people. In a word, Plymouth was not waiting. And that is encouraging, that is inspiring, and that is testament to your commitment. Third, I'm blown away by the passion and engagement. That is the big question for churches in the 21st century. All of the church growth literature, all of it is no longer talking solely about membership and not so much about fun. They're talking about how do you engage people who are surrounded with so many other things that are getting their attention, so many other things to participate in. Plymouth has done a wonderful job of keeping people engaged. Our willingness to stretch and engage and imagine new and creative ways to connect, to participate, it has been critical to heeding the call to ministry and good stewardship rather than just simply muddling through. The purposes of the church have been lived out. And we are a congregation still trying to live into, there's one thing I observe, I want you to hear me clearly. We are a congregation still trying to live into our governance structure. I have seen and watched and read the governance structure, read the purposes of the church, and the truth is we are still trying to live into that governance structure. Yet, the transition to that structure has been slowed by the pandemic closures and also just the familiar and historic practices that are not easily retired. But here's the thing. We have an opportunity to leverage the very best of leadership and fellowship by allowing our governance to help us to meet the challenges of the church. We can use that governance structure to the fullest effect to realize all the things that we want to do in programming, in worship, in staff, but we have to be true to it. We have to continue to keep ourselves honest to it. And I think if we leverage it, we will realize more than we could imagine. Another thing that I've observed since I've been here in 4 months is that far too many members of Plymouth, our budget and our finances remain clouded in mystery and complexity. Unfortunately, such mystery and complexity leaves some either suspicious that we are financially profligate or irresponsible, and leave others frustrated and disengaged because it's just not easy to get our minds around what's going on. I believe we can do better. I do believe that we can let you know what is going on, how we are spending, how we are drafting our budgets, how we are stewarding our finances. But I think I have to say this very clearly to you now. Plymouth Church is not in financial trouble, nor are we at risk for major decline. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that everything is going the way it should go, or we don't have things that we need to look at. Here are a few challenges for our finances. Again, as I said, we are not in financial trouble, and we are not at risk in major decline, but we have some challenges. As will become clear when I talk about the budget in a few minutes, the cost of Plymouth, that is, what it costs to provide our current level of service, worship, programming, staffing, and what it may cost to continue that and to expand or to do more innovative things, exceeds our current income, in which case we rely on our wealth, our investment funds, as a backstop to help us meet our obligations should the need arise. But if we want to make sure that we are not tapping our wealth more than we need, what it means then is that we are going to have to discern if our current levels of giving will meet those obligations. In a word, to do the things we want to do, I'm inviting every member of Plymouth to think about your current level of giving and to discern how you can support the great work that we're doing, to keep it going, and again, to think about how we can continue that good work. The second challenge is we have received recommendations from our Growth Task Force, and they lay out before us creative and innovative ways to meet the current moment while setting us up for the future. And to make most of those great recommendations and to leverage the growth that those recommendations, implementing those recommendations promise, our budget will have to reflect that commitment to growth. Again, we've only just begun to really dig deeper into some of those recommendations, how we're going to live them out, so try and explore and experiment with some of those recommendations. But the truth is, if we are successful, if we do follow those recommendations of the Growth Task Force, there are implications for the budget. And so we need to be prepared to meet the moment. If we are successful, if we start to realize growth, that means that our cost, the cost of doing what we do, will go up. And we will need your commitment and help to do that. Another challenge we have with our finances is that we have a list of future capital needs that our current budget position will not easily accommodate. Now, the Board of Finance is looking at options for meeting our capital needs in the future in ways that will not bust the budget. We are going to be having those conversations, but that is a challenge to our finances that we're going to have to get our hands around. And so I want to just lift that up to you to let you know that those are the conversations that we're going to have in the near future and that the Board of Finance has started to have. And finally, another challenge is that when confronted with budget shortfalls and anxieties about our finances, there is always the temptation to reduce our commitments to the most vulnerable among us. And here's the thing where I will challenge Plymouth Church, that whatever anxieties we have about our finances, whatever happens in our budget, that we do not fall into the temptation of choosing a path of austerity that causes us to retrench from providing for human needs. We cannot give up our work in supporting those who desperately need help from us. And so I would pray that whatever you think of our finances, that we never choose that option of abandoning the commitments we made to social justice and to human needs. Now, I want to shift a little bit to the budget. I know I'm running out of time, but I want to get it out. As I said earlier, Plymouth did a wonderful job during the pandemic closures in thinking and being creative. But it is the truth that we, like every other church around, all the churches around the world, we can describe the first reaction to the pandemic and to the closings. The first reaction was surviving. That's what we had to do. Every church went into survival mode. And there is no doubt that through some trial and error, through some, like I said, creative thinking and imaginings, we have done very well. And so in working with Ann Gustafson and Joy Hansen and Claire Colliander in working on the budget that we propose, we set about moving ourselves beyond reacting and surviving. We wanted to give ourselves a better than even chance to plan, truly plan, how to serve and to meet the moment of a post-pandemic environment. I believe there is brewing within I just believe that there's brewing out there, especially when we get on the other side of Plymouth, that there are people who are discerning and looking for meaning. And I want us to be ready when they come knocking. I want Plymouth to be there, to be not only an option, but also a partner with everybody who comes looking for a community with which to make meaning. And so the budget we propose is one that sets us up to receive and welcome new people, but also welcome all of us back in a real way. Survival is not a good long-term strategy. It is not. And that's not who we are. And we used our imagination creatively to provide worship, programming, and staff capacity. And as we get ready to come out of this pandemic, as we get ready to reopen in the fall, survival and reaction cannot be our goals. And we have the resources, financial and human, such that survival does not have to be our default position. And so I proposed a budget that right now is not very ambitious. I admit that to you. We're not trying to break any new ground. It, in some ways, and I hate to use the word, and some people have challenged me for using it, it is in some ways status quo or a hold harmless budget in which we try to maintain the level of quality of worship programming and full-time equivalents we did in this virtual setting when everything was closed. And so we remain cautious given the limitations of that COVID pandemic. But I also did not want to present an austere budget. In essence, I did not want to take a scalpel to this budget and get rid of everything that we've been doing. I do not think retrenchment and austerity will prepare us for what is next. As I said, we want to maintain where we are at every level so that when we get back on the other side of pandemic restrictions and quarantines, we will not have to start from zero. We will not have to rebuild. Rather, we will build on the creative programming, outstanding staff work to move into the next phase of our mission and vision. My concern is that any kind of going back, just as this moment is arriving, will be hard for us to really keep our momentum and keep that effort going. And so, in the end, in this budget, we did not give up or let go of what is working. This budget reflects what is working at Plymouth, what is serving the purposes of the church, what is helping our members maintain connection and engagement. We are trying to build on the parts of the budget as a way of maintaining our effectiveness and preparing ourselves for what is next. I am truly excited about Plymouth Church. I walk through this community and I join people in conversation about how powerful we truly are. And so I'm ready. I am ready. I get up every morning excited to get to work because I know we have made a difference and I know we have everything that we need in you, in your gifts, in your abundance. We have everything that we need to continue this history and record of success. Oh, may it be so.
Thank you, Dwayne. I always love your enthusiasm. Good afternoon, beloved Plymouth community. On March 14th, 2020, Plymouth deacons and clergy made the necessary decision to cancel in-person worship for the next day, which was March 15th. While we knew very little about what was being called coronavirus, we all witnessed a fast progression towards a worldwide shutdown. March 15th was the day we were to have a congregational meeting to vote on the calling of Seth Patterson as our Minister for Spiritual Formation and Theater.
That's right.
We had hoped until almost the very last minute that we could have continued with our plans, realizing the complexity of trying to reschedule a congregational meeting, but unbeknownst to us in those complicated hours of discernment, a worldwide pandemic had begun. We were able to produce a worship service, sort of miraculously, on March 15th, because of the amazing talent and quick creative thinking of the Plymouth community. Chris Bonhoff agreed to come and be our videographer. Cody Bordeaux swiftly and smoothly adjusted equipment in the sanctuary so that everything we did could be transmitted. Nina Johnson was here using her smartphone to broadcast the service via Facebook Live. Philip and our stellar quintet pivoted to provide gorgeous music, and the content of worship was restructured so that it could translate well via recording rather than being in person live. Even my two daughters were present that day, holding up cue cards for the clergy to keep us on track and allow us to look at the camera rather than down at our notes.
That's right.
We did not really know what we were doing, but we wanted our faith community to come together virtually for assurance, for comfort, for information, and for the ability to pray together and praise together, even in the midst of an unsettling time. What we thought was a temporary situation, certainly not lasting more than a few weeks, has become an unwelcome yet familiar way to do church. We have refined our process since then, and we've added more and more virtual offerings as the days turn to weeks and then to months. In May, we did call Seth via a Zoom-based congregational meeting. Yay! Chris Bonhoff is now an essential member of Plymouth staff as our videographer. Cody's talents continue to amaze us as Zoom meetings, live stream, and webinars are our way of life. We are broadcasting worship each week so widely that our audience is global, with well over 1,000 people regularly watching our weekly services. The lessons of this pandemic are too many to name, but one is that we will always have a virtual worship service so that those who are unable to join us in person for any reason can remain connected to the Plymouth community. We can all attest that navigating a pandemic is perplexing and fraught with so much uncertainty and loss that at times it has been devastating. For us as a church, discerning what is safe and learning how to protect all of you and staff and building tenants and food shelf and community meal guests is now priority. With the governor's order of a mandated state shutdown, establishing a COVID advisory group was our best first response. I need you all to know that this team, who is comprised of Dr. John Davenport, Dr. David Homans, Director of Operations Ann Gustafson, Ministry Assistant for Hospitality Emily Vanell, and me, your Minister for Congregational Care and Worship, has met weekly at least over the last year, interpreting data from the CDC, from the Minnesota Department of Health, from Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Michael Osterholm, in order to guide us in establishing protocol around in-person gatherings, the use of Plymouth spaces, the safety of our building tenants, all with each of you being our primary concern. Every time we meet, we ask, how do we keep you safe? How do we mitigate this deadly disease, slow the spread, enforce precautions, and keep being church even when we cannot meet in our beloved sanctuary on Sunday mornings? COVID-19 has affected every aspect of our community life. And still, Plymouth has forged ahead, building relationships, responding to the needs of the community and beyond, growing in faith, challenging ourselves to examine our privilege, experiencing creative worship and prayer vigils and evensong, bringing our boards and committees together virtually to do the work of the church. Every step of the way, the COVID advisory group has been diligent and thoughtful, grieving we could not open our doors faster, feeling the emotional tug of so many wanting life to be back to normal, evaluating every single request for people being together in a space inside or outside this building, feeling challenged by different thoughts and opinions offered by numerous members of the church, pacing out just how many could safely gather in the sanctuary or Guild Hall, Jackman, the chapel, every single room. And just when things looked promising for relaxing restrictions and maybe even having Christmas Eve worship in person, another wave of the pandemic struck in November, and we had to pull back fast and shutter up even tighter because people were dying at a rate so devastating, no one could fully process just what was happening. I hope you will join me in offering the COVID advisory group gratitude because it has been relentless, painstaking work that's far from done. We meet again on Wednesday. I want you to know that we have made decisions, and not all of them have been popular, based on these guiding principles created from the purposes of Plymouth Church. These are those which guide us. As a congregation, we have a sacred duty to protect and care for each other. And therefore, the health of all of those in our congregation is of a higher value than gathering together in person. We have been guided by this thought that even in a pandemic, we must be careful of exclusivity. When we open the church up for worship, we want all the Plymouth family to be able to attend. We do not want to mandate who is allowed to attend and who is not. We do not want to take reservations for worship. We do not want to turn anyone away. And third, the COVID advisory group is determined to make the best decisions that we can based on the latest scientific data, which is always evolving, while honoring our values of compassion for each other and our desire to face this challenge together. I know that many of you have become understandably impatient, waiting for the moment when we will swing wide the sanctuary doors and return to pre-pandemic church life. Many of you have been vaccinated, and that is wonderful. But there are also a large number in our community, including most of our children, who have not yet had the opportunity to be vaccinated. And I cannot imagine a Plymouth church community in which we would say that only some are invited to participate. I want to be the church who places unity first, which is steadfast in the message that all are welcome. Because again, even in a pandemic, we must be careful of exclusivity and of leaving anyone behind. Today, I do bring you good news, an opportunity for all to gather for worship and fellowship. Beginning June 6th and every Sunday throughout the summer, we will offer worship outdoors in our parking lot. I'm so excited about yet another possibility for creativity and being together. There will be music and a message and community. Joy will be known. We will nurture one another in the presence of God and with the possibilities of community healing. This worship experience will be at 9:00 a.m., again every Sunday beginning June 6th. And we will continue to offer a virtual live-streamed worship from the sanctuary, which on June 6th will begin at 11 a.m. Until then, it's at 10:30. It is the hope and the goal of the COVID Advisory Group, along with the Board of Worship, to resume our pre-pandemic Sunday schedule on Rally Sunday, September 12th. This would mean 2 worship services at 9 o'clock and 11 a.m. with a time for education in between at 10. And oh, I'm already imagining with joy what a celebration that will be. Filling our sanctuary, experiencing a cacophony of community spirit, gathering with our children and our elders together. By this date, September 12th, we hope that our need to socially distance will lessen, but I will tell you that masks will still be required. We want to be able to open fully when everyone can gather, when there are no restrictions on who is in and who is out. Our outdoor service this summer is a way for all of us to gather and to do so safely, and yet, like all of you, we are eager to fill our church pews and greet one another in Guildhall. That said, we have to understand that there are factors beyond our control that could impact this plan. High levels of vaccine hesitancy, new variants, and/or an unexpected increase in community transmission could mean a delay in our Rally Sunday gathering. One of the benchmarks that the COVID Advisory Group established in order to fully open the church building was for the state to achieve herd immunity, or 70% of people vaccinated or immune. The most recent data suggests that herd immunity may be impossible. Please know that the COVID Advisory Group remains committed to tending the ever-changing information and guidelines. We will keep you informed. It is important that people continue to follow Minnesota Department of Health and CDC recommendations for masking and distancing. In addition to vaccination, this will reduce community spread and make it more likely that we will be opening in full on Rally Sunday. Friends, I miss you. I long for the day when we will be together in this space, and I do trust that that day is coming soon. I believe we are a stronger community for what we have been through And my hope throughout this difficult year is that when we are together again, we will be a kinder people and understand anew our calling to love one another. I invite you to reach out to me with your questions and your concerns, to stay tuned in to all of our virtual offerings, and to continue to connect with one another in a variety of loving, supportive ways. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth and Dwayne. Since the pandemic began, our programs, our many, many and varied programs, have undergone significant modifications in order to bring you meaningful and yet safe opportunities. This has mostly meant moving all of our once live gathered opportunities into a virtual format. We have also attempted to find ways to meet outdoors when possible. So these examples that I bring you today, indicating how we have made this shift, are not meant to be exhaustive. In fact, there are lots of things that I have not mentioned. This is meant to be illustrative of the strength and viability of our all-ages programming. Children and youth activities have continued with surprisingly little pause, but great change in this last year. This is in large part due to the creativity and energy of our Director of Children and Youth Ministry, Nina Johnson, with the support of the Committee for Children, Youth, and Family. In the last year, church school has at times been both virtual and in person. We had our annual summer peace camp, clubs formed to meet outside, to do hiking, biking, improv, as well as over Zoom. A new confirmation class began in January, and I have the honor to be able to teach 12 eighth graders. Not teach, lead, walk with. They teach me too. Our children and youth community has remained vibrant and inspiring. Sunday Forum last spring had to cancel its spring offerings, but quickly pivoted to a Zoom webinar forum in the fall. And these have been wonderfully and really extraordinarily curated by the Sunday Forum committee, so thank you all. And even this summer, they will continue twice a month. In the fall, we will follow the guidance of the COVID team, and they might be back in person at that point. You can find archived and upcoming forums on our website under the Explore section. Spiritual Exploration also, had to postpone its programs in the spring, but has also continued to offer an inspiring selection of classes, workshops, and opportunities since September. From book discussions to bird watching, podcasts to art making, and these will continue this summer. We have opportunities this summer as well. Again, all of this can be found on our website under the Explore section. Our racial justice initiative has remained active. We are in the process of working on our second Racial Justice Spiritual Reflection Circle, which is a small group that meets once a week to go through a process of theological and personal examination to work on racial justice work. You can see every Friday a This I Believe Racial Justice is Personal video done by members of your own congregation. These are also powerful. And then once a month we have a discussion on a podcast called Seeing White. This has been happening on the third Tuesday. You don't need to remember that. It is going to move to a Thursday. You will have more information on this coming up. We hope you do not have to have participated before to join now. You listen to a podcast, and it's a different one every month, and then you come and you talk about it. Our contemplative group has been creative and mindful in all the ways we expected them to be. They have met outdoors, in person, and they also meet in small groups online for silent contemplation and active discussions. Even our film club has continued to offer things. We've had 2 discussions in the last couple months in which people watched the film beforehand and then came together to discuss. Literary Witness in mid-April did a congregational Zoom poetry reading in which people offered their own poem to the group. And this is in hopes of when we come back, we do that in person again together. We've collaborated with the Hennepin History Museum on A Color of Law with Richard Rothstein. We are going to do this summer some conversations and panels on community safety and policing. There is so much to see and do. Theater 45 Degrees did not, unsurprisingly, was not able to do anything this year because it's hard to do theater when you can't gather together. But in the next year, we are planning a few things. We are planning a probably monthly play reading series on stories of a hoped-for future. These stories will not be taking place in the future, but rather how can we tell the stories of a hoped-for future so that we can expand our imagination and work together to make it so. This fall, we also brought together 3 playwrights and commissioned them to write a play after reading the book My Grandmother's Hands by Resmaa Menakem together for about a year. The plays will not be on the book, but rather inspired from going through that book together. And you can find more of this at theater45.com, and you can learn a bit about these 3 playwrights, Antonio Duke, C. Michael Menge, and Annalise Robinson. And these have been coordinated by my partner, Ashanti Ford. There is so much to be done and so much to be communicated and so much happening. So we ask that you continue to go to our website, you continue to look at the Friday email as we continue to make both of those better and easier to access the information. It will all be there. If you have questions on anything directly, please contact me. I would love to help you. That's our update on programming. It is now time for our questions and answers. I'm going to sit down right off camera here, and I'm going to read your questions, and then whomever needs to answer it will answer it. You don't know this, but there are right now over 100 of you here. And that is a great gift on a beautiful Sunday afternoon that over 100 of you have gathered. So just a moment. I'm going to ask some questions. Keep putting them in. All right. So our first question is from Peter and Jane Eichton, and it says, in light of Dwayne's sermon today, could we begin a conversation on using our endowment for the needy in our neighborhood? Dwayne, I believe this is for you.
Thank you for that question. In a word, yes, but I want to stretch that out a little bit more. We should always be having a conversation about how we are going to steward our wealth. And there will be many opinions about how to do that. But that is the invitation to always, when we talk about fellowship and stewardship, as I talked about in the sermon, the question becomes, how do we live out this call to fellowship and stewardship? And we have another a guiding principle. How do we seek and serve God within, among, and beyond? And so whatever we do with our finances, whatever we do with our wealth, it is worth posing the question. Peter, you posed it, and you should pose it. It should be a conversation to the leadership. It should be a conversation with your fellow members. But the purpose of it should be, how do we live out this vocation that we have assumed in the name of Plymouth Church, and how do we live out the purposes of the church? And I welcome, by the way, there is no question and no conversation I'm not willing to engage, because that's how faithful people in fellowship and people who want to be faithful stewards do it. So I welcome it. I'm sure many of your fellow members welcome it. And it is worth that we keep that in mind, that we should always be in conversation about what we do with our abundance and with our wealth.
Bonnie Yonda asks, When might we hear more about the philosophy of all or nothing live worship? Annual meetings, special congregational meeting, and then she follows that up by saying she's referring to the sanctuary worship, of course.
I'm not quite sure, Bonnie, what you mean by all or nothing live worship. I'm guessing that you mean why have we chosen just to wait until everyone could come back rather than restricting attendance or numbers. And I did kind of cover that in my comments today. I certainly will bring it up at the annual meeting and have other venues to talk about the reasons behind the COVID advisory group's decision, again in consultation with the Board of Worship, about the reasons why it doesn't feel like the right thing to open the building to only some and not all. And that's why I'm just really excited about our live worship opportunity this summer outside where everyone can come. And then, of course, waiting in great anticipation for Rally Sunday, which I anticipate to sort of be a full day of grand celebration as we return and have an official homecoming.
The annual meeting was also part of the question. Do we know how we will do that this year?
How we will do the annual meeting?
Will it be in this format, or will it be...
As of right now, unless things change dramatically in the next 4 weeks, we would be having our annual meeting as we did last year, and how you're watching it now, which would be a virtual Zoom-based webinar.
And that is on June 13th.
Correct. Annual meeting date is June 13th.
Another question, I believe this one is for Dwayne. Bonnie asks, how will the budget be shared? Posted, published, mailed out?
Bonnie, I'm still learning that from my understanding from the treasurer, Claire Colliander, they will send that out electronically, and it would be posted somewhere. I think you'll have access to it that way. That's something, since I'm new, I'm still learning in this budget process, but I do know that it's going to happen because I've seen what was sent out to the congregation last year, and we are preparing, as we're working on that budget, there has been conversation about how to prepare those documents and get it out to you so you will see it, because the congregation has to make the decision on passing that bill, that budget. So you're going to get it one way or the other because we need you to vote on it. So look for that, and we'll be working with our communications people and with the deacons to make sure you get your hands on that budget.
There's another one for you. Ann Seltz writes, and I believe this is it's a comment to Peter's question, but I do think it's worth exploring. She says, the endowment is our stable resource from which we can use interest, if available, and not reduce it for our future members. So is there some conversation you want to say about what endowment means and investment accounts and all that?
Right. This is one of those areas where I think it is we make this far more complicated than it should be, and I have said that we will need to really have a discussion with the congregation so people can understand it. And the principle in that back and forth, again, there are many philosophies around it. I am not even sure that we have, as a congregation, agreed upon what our philosophy will be. That may be some work we're going to have to do. But with an endowment, look, we can talk about how much of your interest that you do, how do you set apart your principle and not touch it, what should be the amount of draw. We have some generally accepted accounting principles that tell you how much of it should come. That's worth having a conversation. But in this discussion about what we do, again, I want to hold up, we use this word stewardship. And every time someone uses that word, they have a certain thing they mean by it. Some people say stewardship, they want it to mean, it means savings. Some would say stewardship means how much you give. Theologically and philosophically, stewardship is how do you tend to it? How do you tend to the abundance that you have been given? So someone may have an opinion that, oh, my principle is that I leave everything for somebody else. Somebody else may say, well, no, it's an abundance that I want to share. Tending. How do we faithfully tend, take care of? By the way, here's the principle. Now, this may knock you on your butt. How do we take care of something that does not belong to us? You may disagree with me theologically, but none of this stuff that we have, nothing that we own belongs to us. It is the generosity of God that gave it to us. And when we say stewardship, when I preach stewardship, it is, how do I faithfully honor a God who faithfully entrusted us with it? And if we start from there, I guarantee you'll be surprised what you do with that endowment.
All right, Beth, the next one, it's two, but I'll put them together, is for you. Becky Doherty asks, is the building opening before September for funerals, memorials, weddings with limitations as needed? And then there's a follow-up to that about small groups, book clubs, discussions, so forth.
Okay. Yes, we have been offering memorial services throughout this time, except for a very short time in the late fall, early winter, when it just seemed unsafe. Currently, our capacity for weddings and funerals is 50 in the sanctuary. Now, we are hopeful that as we continue to move through the summer, we'll be able to increase those capacity limits. But right now, based on space, based on safely getting people in and out of the building, and the other kind of protocols that we need to follow, we're at 50. So we currently have 2 weddings on the schedule, and those couples know that right now we're at 50. We could be able to change things and increase capacities before their important days, and we also realize how very difficult that is. As you're planning a big event, to not know, but we simply don't know. And the COVID advisory group is moving steadily but slowly towards reopening, really paying attention right now to the influx in cases because of the various variants that are out there. We do have a memorial service tomorrow at 11 a.m. for Warren Beck. Right now our memorials are you have to register to come through the family, because we have a capacity of 50. And we also realize that a time of loss and death is extremely significant, so we're really working hard to tend all those needs in a sad time. Many people are waiting to have a memorial gathering until we can be more open, but some families are choosing to move forward now. The COVID advisory group has made a priority to try to make space for our support groups that have gone more than a year without being able to meet in person, and I hope that you are all aware that Plymouth hosts many recovery groups in a week, and they all had to go virtual, and we were hearing over and over how difficult it was for people in recovery to find they were missing their community. And so we are open to a couple of our very small gatherings, 10 or less. We have also, any request we have for the use of the building for a small group to gather is vetted through our COVID advisory group. So if you are part of a small group, a book club, a committee, and you are interested in using some space in Plymouth to meet, don't hesitate to contact Emily Vanell, and she, again, will bring it to the COVID advisory group, and depending on numbers, right now we're pretty committed to staying to 10 or less, which we know is limiting for those of you who are involved in groups that are larger than that. We're also very aware in this year of doing everything virtually that has really been an excellent way for people to stay connected. with their boards or committees or other small groups at Plymouth, even if they're traveling or spending the winter in Arizona or Florida. And so as we move forward, moving towards more gatherings in person, we're also quite mindful that we have board members, for whatever reason, may not want to travel to Plymouth for a meeting. So how can we do both and? How can we always have that component where people could join a meeting, a committee meeting, a board meeting, a small group meeting, virtually, while some of us are here in person? Anything else?
You got that one.
Okay.
All right. So, but this next one is for all three of us and beyond. So stay up and then.
Okay.
Tom Anderson says, how are the three of you doing in this time of great uncertainty? How are all my friends on the staff doing? I miss seeing everyone. Well, we miss seeing you too, Tom, you and everybody. We do. Since I'm already making my mouth move, I'll answer your question first. I am doing, oh, here I am. Hi. It's like you see behind the scenes of the radio broadcaster. I'm doing well. I feel very fortunate and lucky. My family is doing well. And it's been a great gift and honor to have this place and all that we've been doing and figuring out as grounding in this time. And I love working with these two wonderful colleagues and Cody and everybody else on staff. So that has been a gift. Thanks for asking. I appreciate that.
I will also say thank you for asking. I feel very blessed to be part of a team and have never had to kind of go it alone in making decisions and figure things out. I have a lot of good friends who are in churches that don't have that same kind of situation, and this has really been a year in the wilderness as they try to figure everything out without a lot of support. So I'm really grateful for that. I will also tell you that in 28 years of ordained ministry, this has absolutely been the hardest year. And I miss the ways that I have honed in doing pastoral care and being able to be with people and to be a listening presence. I'm grateful for technology, but nothing really takes the place of being with someone you care about. And so I'm noticing that too. Dwayne?
Thank you for asking. I'll answer it this way. Well, first of all, I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. But I will answer it this way too. Everyone who colleagues and friends have asked me, how is it going? I think they've asked that question half expecting me to say that because we can't gather together, that it has been difficult. But I think I surprise them when I say that Plymouth Church has been a great gift and exciting time for me. Even though I certainly hate that I'm not in front of you and surrounded by you in person, Plymouth has done such a great job. My colleagues have done such a great job of welcoming me that it has been a great privilege, and I feel really held and supported and included, and that feels really good and it feels really safe, and I appreciate it. The one thing that I think that grieves me a little is the preaching moment. I love preaching. I think that is the gift that God gave me. And yet, the preaching is not a solo activity. There may be one person speaking, but preaching is also the work of the people. Your hearing it is one part of that equation, but hearing it in person together is how we discern and learn and react and have conversation. And I feel that poverty, and my prayer is that I can hold on until that moment that I'm able to stand before you, accountable and included, and in conversation with you as I proclaim, because the proclamation itself is yours too, and to do it in an empty sanctuary, something is missing, and I pray for the day we can get it back.
And for everybody listening, I look forward to the time where you can be in the room and listen and be part of that conversation with Dwayne and his sermons. You've only ever heard him recorded or over a screen. This will be a great gift for you all. So we have two questions that are together. They might even be in conversation with each other. And if no other questions come up before the next minute, we will then end. Yeah. So Nancy Gores says, I hope we will have Zoom meetings before the annual meeting for the proposed budget to be presented, questions answered, and discussed. Jean Thompson from the Board of Finance responds to that. I believe that last year, Claire Coliander, who is our deacon and treasurer right now, hosted virtual budget explanations and conversations prior to the annual meeting. May we have that opportunity again this year, once members receive the budget?
To answer both those questions in one answer, all those things are still open. We are still in the middle of those conversations and trying to get the budget passed and in shape. That still is, we're still doing that. And so once we get that process complete and the deacons approve that budget for submission to the congregation, all of those opportunities will be available. We will be working to make that possible. And since you posed that question, I know, and if that's also a practice, again, the other thing is that I still get to say I'm new. So there's a lot of things that I can answer your question is, let's see how it was done, and we'll talk about how to do it. So I have every reason to believe that we will make those opportunities available to you even as we continue to get to that moment where it gets before the deacons and get finalized, and we anticipate and prepare for the congregational meeting.
And then one last one came in, but it's, again, part of this conversation. Jean Thompson, again, part of our Board of Finance Administration. Just a word about our benevolences to our neighbors and communities less fortunate than we are. In the past, Plymouth has designated 10% of our stewardship contributions to the care of these communities. In the last few years, we have had to reduce those benevolence gifts by 50% due to the need to present a balanced budget. I think Dwayne's comments about stewardship are spot on. If we can increase our giving, we can look to restore budget reductions, especially as they involve our benevolences.
Thank you, Gene. And I will be having a conversation with all of you in that regard. I will be talking to you about how we can honor our commitments to not just Plymouth Church, but to the people around us, the vulnerable people around us. I think that we have an opportunity here, and I want to use that word again, opportunity. That is the beauty and the gift of being community. That is the beauty and the gift of fellowship and stewardship. That when we truly, truly do it, it will blow your mind what happens. I have seen it before. I've experienced before. And by the way, I've seen it here. When we give in to the spirit and vocation of fellowship and stewardship, boy, we can move mountains. And that includes helping the most vulnerable among us. I believe that.
That is it, friends. We really appreciate your time with us today. Any further questions, you know how to get a hold of us. If you don't, get a hold of us to find out. Not sure how that works, but we'd love to talk to you more.
Thank you. God bless you.